Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for a couple more minutes to allow people to gain access to the Webex. We are also streaming on YouTube. So if you are not a board member, and could you kindly switch over to the YouTube channel if you're not also participating in presentations? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, that can't happen.
You about ready, Pat?
Yes, we can start whenever you're ready. I will just remind everyone to please mute your systems if you are not speaking. So whenever you're ready, Chair, we can begin.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the August 27th study session. So as Pat was saying, if you have a question or comment, make sure that you put it on the chat line so that she can answer the question for us, or get somebody to answer the question for us. And with that, Scott, are you available? I'll turn it over to you.
I am here. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul Hodgins and Joe from Valley Metro, our CFO, and Joe Bauer from City of Phoenix Transit for our first item, which is to give the board an update, the board's an update on our reduced fare and our fare collection system. So Paul and Joe?
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Chair, members of the board, it's the first item here is a two-part. As you know, we've had some challenges with reduced fare and the increased use of reduced fare over the past several years. We implemented a strategy to try to help curb that. So I have an update on how that went. And then the second part is an update from Joe Bauer from the City of Phoenix Public Transit Department on the status of our fare collection system project to replace the current fare collection system. So to kick off the reduced fare update, if you go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, we've had really, because of the proliferation of retail outlets, we've seen over the last 5 years a significant increase in our reduced fare. Part of the problem is there was no eligibility check at the point of sale. So one of the strategies we implemented back in January of 2019 was to amend our agreements with the retailers and require them to check eligibility when anybody came in to purchase the reduced fare. Just as a note, not all retailers have signed the agreement, and we'll have some discussion about that as additional interim strategies. So next slide. So we collected data for calendar year 2018, which was a full year before we implemented the change, and then calendar 2019, which includes pretty much a full year after we made the change. So we have past sales by type, whether they're reduced or full fare, by sales outlet, whether it was retail at a ticket vending machine, whether it was a cash fare on board, et cetera, and then ridership by fare type, just to see what some of the impacts of this new requirement was. So just looking at some of the data collected on the next slide, please. So when we look at total past sales, full fare on the left, or excuse me, yes, full fare on the left side, 2018 being the purple bar, 2019 being the green bar. We see a slight increase in full fare past sales, actually total fare sales, but on the reduced fare, we see a significant decrease. On the next slide, looking specifically at retail sales, pretty much the same pattern. We see a small increase in full fare past sales at retail outlets, but a much more significant decrease in reduced fare sales. So that suggests to me that that the requirement to check eligibility did have an impact at the retail outlets, but that not necessarily those who didn't purchase the reduced fares didn't necessarily switch to full fares, because we didn't see the same type of increase in the full fare sales. Going to the next slide, looking at sales through ticket vending machines, where we aren't able currently to check eligibility, we did see an increase in reduced fare sales at TVMs and only a slight increase in full fare past sales at TVMs, suggesting that those who couldn't then buy the reduced fare at a retail outlet were just shifted that to ticket vending machines. So we'll want to look at some strategies to try to curb that. Next slide. The impact on ridership, basically 3 categories here. The first set is full fare pass use. The second set is reduced fare pass use, and then the third is all others. That would be cash fares, it would be our platinum pass, or any other fare types. So for both the other category and the full fare between 2018 and 19, we saw a slight increase in ridership, but a significant decrease in ridership from the reduced fare passes. So my takeaway overall, as I mentioned, is that we've curbed the purchase of reduced fares at retail outlets. We saw a slight shift to TVMs, but overall, those people did not shift to full fare passes. We basically lost those sales and lost the ridership. Next slide. So we presented some additional steps. We talked to our fare policy working group back in March, because, just when the COVID hit. We talked about some potential next steps to provide additional controls. We agreed to kind of put this on hold until we get through COVID, but we are preparing some, to implement some of these at the appropriate time. A couple of things we could do fairly quickly is to validate pass sales at TVMs on purchase. Right now, you can purchase multiple passes at once and they aren't validated. You can validate them, or what we're seeing is people carry them around and flash them without validating them, so they can use a day pass for multiple days until somebody, fair enforcement catches them. But so that would be one solution, would be to validate immediately on sale. It would also be to potentially limit the number of passes per transaction at retail outlets. Some additional solutions or additional controls, we do need to review these for potential impacts with Title VI. Doesn't mean we can't move forward, but we just need to understand what the impact is on the availability of fares throughout the system. We could look at eliminating the sales of reduced fares altogether at TVMs. I think there are a lot of retail outlets fairly close to all of our stations along the light rail line, so that could be an option. We could also eliminate retailers who don't sign a revised agreement. We'd have to look to see where those retailers are to make sure that it doesn't impact the availability of fares generally. And the other thing we could do is to eliminate retailers who aren't checking for availability or eligibility, even if they've signed the agreement. That would require some additional effort to actually check up on those retailers and to see whether or not they're actually checking. I think, yeah, that was all I wanted to present on the reduced fare. I think we've made some progress, and we do have some interim strategies that we could implement at the appropriate time. Obviously, our long-term solution here is with the new fare collection system project. But before I have Joe talk a little bit about that, are there any questions or comments on the reduced fare issue generally? Was there anything in the chat? Nothing? Okay, all right, thank you. Joe?
Good morning.
Microphone.
Try this again. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Joe Bauer. I'm with the City of Phoenix Public Transit Department. I am the Deputy Director over Facilities and Contracts within Public Transit. And I'm going to run through some slides on our Regional Fare Collection System project. And as you are surely aware, we've had, you might want to click through all those of the text come out, just so. So our original system, that project began in 2005. I believe it was launched in 2007 and 8. And if you think about what you had for a cell phone in 2007, it was, soon outdated. So the fare collection system is no different. The equipment is proprietary, and so is the software. Adding any features or making changes to the system is difficult. And in all reality, that system has exceeded its useful life. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, excuse, thank you. You can scroll through the. So the new system that is proposed and we are moving forward with is really trying to get us to current technology, and I use that term a little bit loosely as it changes every day. So we're going to have mobile ticketing through a mobile application. We're going to go to reloadable smart cards. We're going to have some innovation in our fares, and I'll speak in a moment about fare capping. The system will be web-based, and really it's called an account-based system, which means we all as transit riders manage our own accounts, whether it's a mobile app or a reloadable smart card. And one of the features we are going to build in is fare capping, which right now we have 31-day passes, which allow you to get a discount buying 31 days in advance. Under the new system, fare capping will allow you, as long as you're registered with an account, whether it's a reloadable smart card or a mobile app, you can then, each purchase applies and goes towards that cap. So if you only put in, $5 every time or every day or every week, whatever, depending on your frequency, but that'll all count towards the cap. So at some point, after so many rides, the rest of your month would be free. So that's an exciting feature. You see it in transit agencies across the region. We'll establish fare policy related to that. That'll be up and coming. Next, is there one more? Yeah, there. So we'll have, part of that system means we are putting validators on all the buses and all of the light rail platforms. And the validators are simply a infrared or tap feature that if you have it on your mobile app, or for example, it can be scanned, or if your reloadable card, it can be tapped as you board. And also we are replacing all the ticket vending machines in the system. And included in the scope of this were ticket vending machines for the Tempe streetcar project also. And I should mention that all options and equipment obviously will be ADA compliant. Next slide, please. So this project is built or programmed to be conducted in 2 stages. The first stage will be the mobile ticketing and installation of validators at light rail platforms and on the buses. And we will start with a pilot launch of a mobile app, hopefully in March of 2022. Sounds like a long ways off, but there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. We'll do the installation. There's a lead time to get validators ordered and delivered. So that phase will happen first, and then at the same time, we will be able to start the phase 2 process for reloadable smart cards and getting our ticket vending machines lined up to be installed on the light rail alignment and obviously the Tempe streetcar. The program now is, the big issue is unbanked customers or cash only riders, and both the mobile app will have a feature that you could for cash only people, and along with the unbanked, with the reloadable smart card, you could go to your local corner grocery or your corner drugstore and pull a Valley Metro branded reloadable card off a rack and add value to it in any amount you should desire. Next slide, please. And can you scroll through? You can go do it. So just before I go to this slide, I will mention that we are having our project kickoff meetings Monday, August 31, with this fare collection system. We're spreading the kickoff over 3 days, and where there's a lot of obviously topics, but one of the items to be discussed in the agenda is expediting the timeline and looking at opportunities to bring this on board sooner than later. And now in the pandemic era that we are in, we'll also be looking at ways that maybe we can facilitate a quicker launch of a mobile app with what kind of options we would have to be able to do that, to help our riders become more comfortable with front door boarding and obviously protecting the bus operators at the same time. So this project has an overall cost of a little over $61 million, and that includes a capital cost or the base contract and then operation and maintenance support. As you can see by the slide, the capital cost has an 80% Federal Transit Administration funding. It has 3 years to install, develop, and implement the mobile app and the reloadable smart card. And then we go into the O&M support period. The initial period is 9 years, and then we have options for 2 3-year extensions since we're not really able to predict what technology and where we will be at 9 years from, once we're in the O&M phase. Next slide, please. So this procurement We did a request for proposals for this. We started, it was issued on the street in January of 2019. We went through 6 proposals. We had an evaluation panel that was represented by Phoenix, Valley Metro, and Tempe, City of Tempe. And we had technical experts from both agencies to support the discussion and evaluation. There were non-scoring technical advisors. We had 2 that made the competitive range that moved to the best and final offer stage. The panel ultimately recommended the award to VIX Technology, and you can see on the slide the cost for VIX versus Init was the other best and final offer proposer. So we have moved forward. We added some options to this project, including security cameras at the TVM, some enhanced fare enforcement tools. We added an enhanced bill exchanger to this project, and then we added the cash only or the unbanked paying for the mobile app as features that were addition to the base scope. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary of the timeline of this process. I should really note that Valley they hired a subject matter expert to help us, and that same subject matter expert has been with us for the whole period of time to help guide us. We had regional workshops and regional meetings to discuss what we envisioned for a fare collection system, and so the RFP went through the city approval process with City Council award on March 18th. The pandemic slowed us down on the kickoff a little bit, but now we're living in the virtual world. So Monday, August 31, we start and the fun begins. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions or concerns? Comments? Thank you so much. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item we're going to discuss is some significant items related to bus, what?
I'm sorry, Robin raised, Councilmember Arredondo Savage has a question.
Okay, Robin, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I was trying to do it properly and raise my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions in regarding what we're doing with the reduced fare update. So thank you for that. I mean, I think what we're going to be moving into is going to be pretty phenomenal and mainstream and innovative. So I'm looking forward to that. I just wonder though, does this new system resolve the reduced fare issues that we're having? Because I don't think there was a mention so much about the origination of the smart card, and basically how are we going to ensure that those reduced fares are being sold to the right people? Has that been addressed at all? That would be my first question.
Yeah, be happy to answer that one, council member. So for the reduced fares, we will have an eligibility process. So anybody who wants to use a reduced fare will have to be certified eligible, and their reduced fare ID will be the smart card that's used as the fare medium. And so only those who've been through the process will have a card that's identified as reduced fare eligible. We will have cards available through a retail network, but those are all coded for full fare. And the only way to make them reduced fare is to go through that process and to have an account that's flagged as a reduced fare eligible. So for the most part, the technology will give us the ability to, I wouldn't say eliminate, but minimize any of the abuse or fraud of reduced fares. There's still a potential for those with cash fares, because we'll still accept cash fares on board. But we're looking at strategies to minimize the cash use on board or at TVMs. We'd really like to push riders as much as possible to either the mobile ticket or the smart card, which are both account-based, and we control that through the account.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that sounds like a really good a solution. So basically, I think the users are gonna we're going to have to make sure that they know and are very familiar with the process for them to be able to get that reduced fare card, smart card to begin with. So I think that's really great. And maybe we should think about this too as an opportunity. I know everybody's kind of looking ahead, and COVID has definitely, I think, made us reflect a little bit differently and with our financial challenges. Just make sure as we look at the system regionally, what's happening not only with the way that we do, fare collection, fare sales, but also enforcement, just to make sure that there is consistencies throughout the system. And as we make the change not only to that, and we're doing the new barriers for our operators, it just seems like it would be a really good time to look at that way we're doing things and make sure that we do have that consistency throughout the system. So it's actually easy for everybody, not only for the riders, but also for our employees. And I don't know if that's possible or something, Paul, that you already got on the agenda and planning to do, but I would highly support that.
Yes, I think going back to front door boarding and going to regular enforcement is something we'll be doing in the near future, but certainly we work closely, our operations staff works closely with the city of Phoenix to ensure that we have consistent enforcement and consistent practices across the system. And we'll continue to work with the city to ensure that that's the case.
Question.
Just as one other note, we'll take a lot of the time for the implementation of the smart card system. Once we know what the smart card is, we will start the reduced fare ID eligibility process and get cards out into the system before the smart card system is active, so that there'll be flash cards until launch, but we'll have a lot of the reduced fare ID cards out in the system in time for that launch.
Chair Eric Woods.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yep. So, Paul, I had a question on the process of getting the reduced fare. Are we mirroring the process of how people get their, like the paratransit? Do they have to go to a site where to the mobility center or something like that? What's the process of the reduced fare look like once we transition into this change?
Thank you for the question. I don't know that we have completely worked out every possibility, but we are looking at options where people may come to the mobility center like they do today. We may have mobile, we might convert a bus, for instance, to go around to different locations to do eligibility checks. Some of that may be done through our retail network. We're in the middle of procuring a retail vendor right now. So we may have that some through the retail vendor. There may be some that are really through the web. So we're looking at all different strategies depending on whether it's age-based or disability-based. We want to make it as simple as possible, but effective. So we'll update you more as we develop those strategies and look to implement that.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. If you've been downtown Phoenix recently, which makes you one of the minority of the residents of Metro Phoenix, because there's not a whole lot of people down here, which is both good and bad, for us at least, because we have been able to accelerate or expand some of our construction activities, as have others. But we're not the only ones that are building in downtown Phoenix. There's several construction projects, high rises and others. And not too far in the future, the city of Phoenix will be closing down the Central Station at Van Buren and Central for a major project. And all of this construction necessitates a review of all of our bus routes that come in. And we have a lot of bus routes that come in and either terminate or pass through downtown Phoenix. So what we wanted to do is give you an idea of an overview of how we're going to be handling the changes in bus routes that will be necessitated by both our light rail construction, but also all the other construction activities that are going on. We obviously are working very closely hand in hand with the city of Phoenix on these issues because these changes affect both Valley Metro run routes and City of Phoenix routes. And so I'll turn it over to Wolf Grote, who will take you through this presentation. Wolf?
Actually, Scott, I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to Scott Miller, because Scott has all the details, and I'll be here for questions as well.
So Wolf is delegated to Scott Miller. So Scott Miller, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this presentation of the Downtown Phoenix Bus Reroute Plan. So if you want to advance to the next slide, I'll just go right into the details and without delay. As Mr. Smith had stated, this is actually, I think, an exciting plan based on multiple exciting projects that are happening in downtown Phoenix right now. Most notably, the construction of the downtown hub, which is part of the South Central Light Rail extension, and the joint use redevelopment project at Central Station. What you see on this map right here is an indication of the area around the downtown hub. And the reason I'm showing you this area is that this is the core of our transit operations as our express buses and local buses that operate in downtown Phoenix. They utilize practically every street that you see on this really condensed map. And the hatched areas at Washington and 3rd Avenue, Washington and 1st Avenue, and Washington and Central, along with the same cross streets along Jefferson Street, are areas where, when we're constructing a downtown hub, are going to require significant modifications to traffic flow, which also means significant modifications to our bus system, our bus network that operates through downtown. When we began this planning exercise last October, it was recognized that with this construction activity of not just the downtown hub and Central Station, but also as private developments, as Mr. Smith mentioned, that we needed to find a way that we could provide travel time reliability for our passengers and minimize any of the impacts that we're going to have to them. We recognize there may be some impacts. Some passengers may have to walk a little bit further than they're doing it today, but we really took an objective of looking at the entire downtown area, essentially from 12th Avenue to 7th Street, and from north of Van Buren all the way down to Lincoln, looking at alternative paths to be able to move the buses through downtown and provide good service to our passengers. As part of this, we were looking to avoid high activity construction areas and also develop a plan that has the potential for long-term routing solution. So in some cases, we have detours throughout the year. This is a case where it's not a simple detour, and we're calling it a reroute plan because this reroute will be in effect for approximately 3 to 4 years. Next slide. So just to give you the order of magnitude of how this affects City of Phoenix and Valley Metro is that there are a total of 28 routes that are affected by this reroute plan. 21 are express and rapid routes that serve practically the entire Valley Metro network. There are 6 local routes and 1 circulator route. And as you can see from the graphic, that 14 Valley Metro cities are affected by this in some way or other because those express services or rapid services that originate in those areas do come through downtown and operate in the area where the heavy construction is going to occur. Next slide. So I'm going to go through a couple of maps that show how our current network looks like and how it's going to look like after the reroute plan. So what you see described in this map is in the darker gray area, that is essentially our downtown area from 7th Street to 7th Avenue, from Roosevelt Street down to Lincoln. And that's the core of where a lot of this construction activity is occurring. If you noticed on the map, you'll see that there are 6 traffic cones. Those 6 traffic cones are located in those 6 intersections I identified a couple of slides back. And as you can just see from this map, you can see that our service is coming from the northwest and the west and the east and the southeast are all funneling right through those 6 cones. And so that's what led us to the impetus of why we needed this plan. Next slide. So and how we're going to handle our express network in the future is that we're actually going to split our routes using Adams Street and also using Van Buren Street. And the reason why we're splitting our routes is for 2 reasons. One, we didn't want to put all of our buses onto the same street because we don't want to also be competing with the auto traffic that may also be shifting as a part of the construction activities occurring downtown. And we also wanted to place our services or our future bus stops at locations that are as close to our high boarding locations as possible. So an example I'll give you is that at the location of 3rd Avenue Jefferson, where the county complex and some other facilities are located, that is one of our highest boarding locations in downtown Phoenix for express bus and rapid bus routes. We are taking our highest bus routes that have the highest ridership at that particular location and assigning them to Adams Street so that we can minimize the walk distance for anybody coming south of Jefferson Street. And then the logic is that the ones with the lower ridership at Jefferson Street, those are the ones that get moved up to Van Buren Street. Next slide. So this just shows the reverse routing of our express network. So these are our buses that are leaving downtown in the afternoon. And if you want to advance to the next slide, the routing is very similar to what you saw. Adams Street is also used, but we're using a combination of 7th Avenue and 5th Avenue as well to route our buses around the heavy construction zone. So I'm to go on to keep this presentation moving, go to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about the, one more slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about the existing local routes. City of Phoenix operates the local routes in downtown Phoenix as well as the circulator service. And as you can see, those same routes are also pushing right through that heavy construction area for a part of the downtown hub. And just to give you some context, Central Station is located on Van Buren Street, just north of where those intersections are being constructed for light rail. Next slide, please. So in some cases, based on the way the local operations work, we aren't able to completely avoid all of the construction zones, but we're able to minimize the number of routes that are traveling through them. And I wanted to point out one key element of operations modification that will occur. Right now, our Central Avenue bus service operates from just south of Baseline Road to Dunlap and 3rd Avenue, where the Sunny Slope Transit Center is located at. In the future, with light rail construction occurring essentially from downtown to Baseline, City of Phoenix planners have identified a solution to be able to provide service reliability in the northern portion by splitting the northern part of the Central Avenue route and the southern part of the Central Avenue route. So there'll still be service on Central Avenue from south of Baseline to Dunlap, but it'll be split into 2 routes so that, again, we can maintain service reliability in the northern section of the route. Next slide, please. So what you see here is that the most recent compressed element of our bus reroute timeline. We did actually start the planning process in earnest in October, but in March we had a workshop held with City of Phoenix and others to identify all of the opportunities and flush out all the issues we had. And you notice a couple of bullet points on here that's talking about infrastructure improvements and other elements. City of Phoenix has been very accommodating in identifying new bus stop locations and placing that infrastructure in place before a service change, and also looking at other elements such as upgraded traffic signals to allow safe turning movements of our buses at signalized intersections. So I do want to point out something that on this map. So you see on this map that Central Station is, or timeline, the Central Station is scheduled to close in October, and that the Central Avenue closure for our cityscape area construction of light rail, which is on Central Avenue between Washington and Jefferson, was scheduled to begin in November. We've now recognized an opportunity to be able to start work on October 1st in that block on Central Avenue between Washington and Jefferson. And as a result, we're still going to implement the full service reroute change in October 26 as outlined in the study session packet. But beginning on October 1st, there's one bus stop that's located between Jefferson and Washington Street. We're going to relocate that bus stop 1 block north to Central and Adams. So we'll have a very minor detour for 3 or 4 weeks until we make our full reroute implementation. Next slide. So the last thing I want to touch on is that the community outreach is a huge element of this transition from our existing routing through downtown to our future routing. And we've been working very closely with City of Phoenix, Valley Metro Marketing, and Public Outreach to identify mechanisms to communicate this information to our passengers. What's really important now is that we want to maintain our existing ridership, as you've seen ridership reports and what's happened with COVID-19. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure that the customers understand how to operate, how to maneuver through our system, and how it will continue to benefit them in the future. So we're doing announcements on vehicles. We're having signage placed up in locations that are going to be impacted. And then we're doing a number of outreach elements such as email, press releases, and using our website to be able to give information to our passengers. That's just amongst other items that we're also doing. So just to kind of reiterate back to where we started, as we began this project, our focus was to try to minimize the impact to the passengers. And I think between working with City of Phoenix, Public Transit Department, and as well as Street Transportation Department, that we're able to find a solution that is going to work the best for our passengers that we can provide.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or comments? And I apologize, I can't see everybody's picture. Pat, do you have any questions or comments?
There is nothing in the chat. So if there are any board members who have any questions, please speak up. Okay, doesn't look like we have any. We have about 4 minutes before we can start the board meeting. So if everyone could please just stick around, we'll start right on time at 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Or if you'd like to take a quick break, you can take it now. We'll start at 11:15.
11:16?
Uh-huh.
You want to give it a minute, or are you good?
We are ready to go. So if we can start with the pledge, and then I can do the roll call for board members. So if we could all please, or if all the board members could please unmute your phones, and I'll do a roll call as soon as we're done with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
liberty
with
and
justice for all.
Okay, I'll start with the roll call this morning. Vice Mayor Pat Dennis. Vice Mayor Craig Eustace. Mayor Kevin Harkey.
Here.
Mayor Alexis Hermosillo.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Sharnow. Councilmember Jared Taylor. Councilmember Lauren Tomachoff.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Stipp.
Present.
Supervisor Jack Sellers.
Here.
Councilmember Francisco Heredia.
Here.
Councilmember John Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Kate Gallego. Mayor Gail Barney. Councilmember Clapp.
Here.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself, please?
I'm here. This is
Oh, okay.
Suzanne Clapp. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Mayor Gail Barney.
Pat, he's trying to get in right now. He is having some technical difficulties.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Chris Judd for the City of Surprise today.
Here.
Councilmember Robin Arredondo Savage.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Laborian. Mayor Rui Pereira.
Here.
And Mayor Michael LaVault.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Great, thank you. We are all set, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the August 27th meeting. Do a little housekeeping real quick. If any board member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, please type in your comment into the box and it'll be read out loud and answered. All meeting attendees, if you would please mute your computer and your phone during the meeting until you have a question or a comment. Thank you. First item is our public comments. For today's meeting, public comments are being taken in a written format and will be entered into the official minutes of the meeting. Item number 2 is our Chief Executive Officer report. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all of you. Hot summer. I'm glad we could at least get together once again via the Webex. Couple things I'd like to talk about. We've been very busy since the last time we got together. First thing is to give you an update on the Northwest Extension Phase 2. Just a couple days ago, we received very, very good news and a major milestone from the Federal Transit Administration, who announced that they had allocated $50.6 million in their budget to this project. It's a big milestone. The allocation is not actually cutting a check, but it is the fact that they've set aside that money in budget. So when we get a full funding grant agreement, that money will be available. That's not the entire grant amount. That's a portion of the grant amount, but it is still a major milestone. You can see here on your screen a rendering looking from the northeast to the southwest to the bridge that extends over I-17 from the east side to the left to the west side. The famous Super Salad building cone, their birthday cake, whatever you want to call it, there on the middle of the screen, and Metro Center on the upper right corner. you can see that this project is really, we're excited because this is, first of all, the first elevated station in our system. It'll be very similar to if you've ridden the SkyTrain to the parking lots. It'll be a lot like that, open air. The other thing, though, is that with the recent announcement that Metro Center is completely closing down, this is another picture from the north or the southwest looking northeast. The other exciting thing is that with Metro Center closing down, we are now moving forward with the current owners on what I believe will be a very exciting multi-use, transit-oriented development type of project that'll take a former regional mall and turn it into really a center. We changed the design to both cut costs and by coming straight across and perpendicular to the freeway. And also we wanted to end up there in a place that had huge development opportunities. So we're very excited about that. Construction will actually start this month on some utilities. But in the at the same time that that the public announced that it was announced publicly that there was the 50.6 million, we were informed by the FTA that they have at least approved and are working on the paperwork to approve what's called the Letters of No Prejudice, or LOMP. This is very important for us because what it means is that we can move forward unimpeded with all construction activities prior to receiving a full funding grant agreement. Usually you are restricted in what you can do, and that creates the potential for some havoc with your construction schedule. But by approving this at this time, the FTA specifically told us, we want you to be able to move ahead, not worry about the timing on the FFGA, and you can go ahead full bore on the construction. So we are starting, as I said, this month with utilities and hope to begin, I think, bridge work, the building of the bridge within a month or two. So you'll see some real activity if you go out there near Metro Center. Second thing I'd like to do is that our progress in transit document detailing the highlights is now available. You can get it on our web. We have hard copies for you also that we'll send out. Hillary.
Okay, thank you, Mijo. Bye-bye.
Hillary Foose and her staff will look at that. There's a lot of good things to remember over the last year, a lot of progress. Today is somewhat memorable because it was a year ago today that Phoenix voters overwhelmingly reiterated their support for light rail by defeating Proposition 105, I believe 65-35. I don't know if Mayor Gallego has joined us on the phone on the meeting yet, but once again, congratulations to her and her staff and everyone in the city of Phoenix. That was a good thing. This week is also very, very important because it not only is the 1-year anniversary of 105, but we have a couple of 5-year anniversaries related to light rail specifically and transit. It was 5 years ago this week, a couple of days ago, that the voters of Phoenix approved Transit 2050, Prop 104. And it was 5 years ago this week that the Central Mesa extension was opened. So a lot happened this week to be proud of as it relates to transit and light rail especially. Some of the items that we highlight in this month-by-month recap of the year is the grant agreement for Tempe Streetcar, start of construction of South Central and Downtown Hub, the very, very successful Polar Express events that has attracted several thousand guests in Mesa and Phoenix. We launched our Construct VM smartphone app, which was new. We had the arrival of our new Siemens rail cars. We made service adjustments and had to deal with the COVID-19 challenges on both the rail and the bus side. And finally, this summer, we celebrated the completion of our solar canopies at the Mesa Bus Operations and Maintenance Facility. So we've had a very, very active year, and we're appreciative of these boards' support of all that we do over the year. The next thing I want to talk about, next slide, please, is the launch just recently of our new sharethерide.com platform. Our Commute Solutions group is one that you may or may not be totally aware of, but we have an entire group that works with major employers to encourage commuters and works with them to create carpool plans, van pool, transportation, teleworking, biking. We have several large employers that utilize our, large and small, that utilize our service. And we came out with a new and improved sharetheride.com that is bilingual. And it's a way that commuters can match resources to find out a better way that they can get out of their car and get into public transportation. The new platform is available both on the web and as a mobile app, making it easier for commuters to log their trips. And I would encourage you, if you want to see, go to sharetheride.com or download the app. It successfully transferred over 10,000 users using the existing system with more than 400 employer subsites. So it's a big undertaking, and our Commute Solutions, Abby and her group have done a great job in doing that. Second thing I'd like to talk about is that as part of the new, the federal laws, the FAST Act, we are required to really step up our safety and security reporting. Adrienne Rees and her team works closely with ADOT. Under FAST, the states have the primary responsibility for safety and security on both rail and on bus. The focus primarily right now is on rail because that's where the rules have tighter deadlines. And as part of this new rule, the state safety oversight at ADOT has submitted their annual state safety oversight report of Valley Metro to the governor's office. This is primarily a Valley Metro rail. In addition to the governor's office, the law also requires this report be distributed to the boards directly from ADOT. So those of you who are on the rail board should have received this by email. If you have not, please let Pat or Adrienne know. And like I said, right now it's specific to rail. Bus will follow in the near future. The next item, please. We'd like to talk to you about some of the things that we've undertaken in relation to the COVID. As we all know, ridership is down, but just a little bit of an update. Our ridership is down combined about 45%, about 40% on bus, 55% on rail. While that's significant, as we talk to our peer systems around the country, our hit to ridership is much lower than many, if not most, other systems. You have areas such as, I believe it was BART, had a 95% reduction. MTA in New York City, 80 to 90%. That's more common, is a 70 to 90%, and we never did dip below about 55, 56%. So people are still riding our system. We are still working, as you can see here, our customer experience coordinators handing out masks that were provided to us by the FTA. We had 20, 30,000 masks that were provided to us. City of Phoenix had about a light number. And between the two of us, we are providing those. Right now, we are monitoring on the Valley Metro systems, bus and rail, and I believe City of Phoenix is similar, 90+% compliance on mask wearing, so it has not been a real issue. But I just wanted to read something we received from a light rail rider out of town, talking about her experience with our service and customer service coordinator staff. This is Teresa Summerfield. She said, "Hello, I just wanted to take a moment and thank the City of Phoenix for providing the light rail system." Remember, she's from out of town. "It is surely tax dollars well spent. Along with the exceptional transportation comes exceptional customer service, which was provided by Don McGuire and Kyle Angelini. Their helpfulness was above and beyond my expectations. They helped us immediately when we approached the station, guided us through the payment process. They even took the time to walk us to our car rental address. In these times of uncertainty, it was a relief to have the help and guidance of these two outstanding individuals. Please honor them for their outstanding employees, for the outstanding employees they are. You're lucky to have them on their team." And I would like to say that Don and Kyle are not unique. We are privileged to have incredible men and women who, as I've stated often, have shown up since March when this crisis first began. They've continued to show up and provided service in both the Phoenix and the Valley Metro systems undisturbed and have done an amazing job. Heroes, they are truly heroes. Once again, our face coverings, we have distributed over nearly 16,000 coverings. We have several more. I know the City of Phoenix also has distributed thousands. and we have distributed them along light rail, but also in bus areas in Tempe, Peoria, Glendale, and other places. The next thing I'd like to give you an update on is a Tempe streetcar. We have been able to continue with construction activities through the COVID. In actuality, it's given us some advantages with the reduced traffic in both downtown Tempe and downtown Phoenix. We've been able to do things we hadn't. A couple milestones in the Tempe streetcar, which is about 85% constructed now, moving forward a 2021 opening. And that is that the first passenger stop, the first of 14, has been installed at 6th Street, the Mill. You get an idea of what's going on. Just this month, I should say, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we installed the final piece of track near Dorsey and Apache. So all the track and the concrete and everything around there has been laid. Now we're working on things such as the electrical, other things like that, and looking toward a next year. One thing that you may want to be aware of is that the COVID has impacted some of our opening. The Brookville rail factory in Brookville, Pennsylvania was shut down due to COVID for 3 months. So while we are moved straight ahead on our construction, our rail cars, our street cars will be delayed in being delivered because of the COVID. And so we'll have a finished construction project and yet not have all the cars in. So just be aware of that. One other item that I'm sure all of you were aware of was the Union Pacific derailment that happened right as you can see as it entered the just south of the Tempe Town Lake Salt River on the bridge. At this point, as you can see from the photo on the left, the freight rail bridge is less than 50 feet from our light rail bridge, just to the east of it. You can see in the middle that our bridge was impacted by the fire. We had engineers out there, and luckily we had no significant damage to the structure. Very luckily, you see that pipeline on the bottom. Well, that's we thought that might be all of the fiber optics and all the electronic stuff that uses our bridge. We're fortunate that while these are utilities but non-electronic, and all of our fiber optic and everything are on the east side, so they were unaffected by the fire. So we had some scarring, as you can see. We're going to have to do some work, but we were shut down for a couple days crossing the bridge. But our team did an amazing job. Adrienne Reese was out there literally almost 24/7. Adrienne, if she were in front of you, I'd have her take a bow. On her staff, Dave Zebro helped coordinate our CCTV. We have been very involved with the NTSB and the Federal Rail Administration and Homeland Security in the investigation. It just so happens that we had a train going across the bridge about the time of this derailment. So we were able to provide, we were able to catch some of the happenings in real time and on tape. Trevor Collin from our CSD staff, I helped coordinate with the City of Phoenix, and thank you to the City of Phoenix staff, Keeney Knudsen, for getting bridge inspectors out there. City of Phoenix handles our bridge inspections. Scott Wisner from the bus operations and doing everything. Rick White, who handles our maintenance of way, meaning the bridges and the electrical and everything, and his staff. Rail ops and the ops control. We actually had trains stranded on the east side of the river for a couple days, and that's easier said than done, taking care of, I think it was 11 cars that were stranded. And our alert VM and communications teams. We saw how alert VM and communications becomes critical in that time. So I just wanted to take the time to tell you that our staff is doing incredible work. The last thing I want to talk about, well, before our schedule, is that this is the last meeting that we will have everybody join us on Webex. Right now we are streaming on YouTube, and beginning with our next meeting, the public will be invited to, and staff will be invited to join via YouTube, and the Webex will be for the board members so we can have interaction. We're hoping that'll help the connections and help us to clear up things and give a better presentation so the public and staff can watch in. So if you go to our Valley Metro website, there are instructions on how to load the YouTube and get it done. And speaking of next meetings, as you can see, TMC RMC is next week, the Audit and Finance the week after that, and our next board meeting is scheduled once again on Webex on September 17th, 2020. I know that was a lot to go over, but I appreciate your patience. And Mr. Chair, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Does anybody have any questions on Scott's comments? Okay. The next item, item number 3, is a COVID-19 update and extension of the board executive committee. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it over to Jim. To Jim Hilliard.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We don't have a major COVID update for the board today. Our ridership remains at levels that we've seen over recent months. We're seeing decreases in COVID caseloads across the state, so we're hopeful that that will begin to be reflected in our ridership as business returns to normal. There's a couple other items in motion at this time. I think you're already aware we have permanent barriers being installed on our bus system, and on July 27th, we restored 50% of our reduced express service. Aside from that, there are no further updates.
Thank you. One other thing we'd like to present to the board is, and if ever somebody's got their phone off, if you could all mute your phone because we're getting a lot of feedback here. Thank you. One thing we'd like to do is, one thing that's been very effective, and we appreciate the board for taking this action, is back in, I believe it was May, the board established the executive committee. We've met periodically with the executive committee to handle things that come up that are time sensitive, that we need to do, or that are better handled on a small group. We always bring those actions to the full board after that, but it's more of an administrative matter. We hoped that the COVID would be completely done by now, and so last time we met with you, we asked for an extension of the executive committee to August 31st, which you agreed to. We believe since we're not out of the woods yet, for example, we're not returning to full operations at our admin center. We're still telecommuting at least probably through the end of September, like I know many of you are in your cities. So we're asking that the board extend the life of the board executive committee through December 31st of this year, thinking that hopefully by then we will not have a need for that because we'll be out of the COVID and action mess. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to throw that on the table for action if that's acceptable to the board.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or concerns or comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Bill Stipp. I'd like to make a motion to extend the life of the executive committee till December 31st of 2020.
Okay,
I second Mayor Hermosillo.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, just to give the board kudos at a recent national phone seminar sponsored by APTA, we presented how we have responded to COVID, and this was one of the things we presented, and it was really a centerpiece of the conversation about how this board has reacted to the changing scene of COVID, and many other agencies around the country were very impressed by the fact that this board did something that allowed us to be more nimble and to do things by the establishment of the executive committee. So just want to let you know that this is, while it seemed like a natural action for us, for many others, it was a very innovative approach to solving this problem. So thank you very much for supporting us on that.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 4 would be the minutes. The minutes from the June 18th, 2020 joint board meeting are presented for approval. I would request a motion and a second to approve the June 18th joint meeting.
Kevin Harkey.
Gallego, second.
Pat, you have a first and a second? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next item is item number 5, the Audit and Finance Subcommittee update. Vice Mayor Stipp, would you provide an update?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll start it out with a comment note because that's how our meeting started. we found out that Alexis, our chair, or our CEO's chief of staff, has a very similar name to that of your nearest and dearest artificial intelligence, Alexa. So we actually had an extra guest in our meeting with that. Very briefly, we continued our work with taking a look at the 2021 internal audit plan. This includes a look at federal grant requirements, cash collection and handling at the mobility center, contract management for rail transportation, and fare inspection contracts, in addition to our ongoing travel and credit card expense audits. We also spent some time talking about the internal audit charter and the AFS charter itself, and those two things are going hand in hand with one another. We had another lengthy discussion that'll come back to us in September, and hopefully the full board will see that either at the September meeting or in October at the latest. And finally, we received a brief summary of the paratransit contract management audit done by Jennifer Davis and the audit staff. And we've accepted that as well. One thing to note for Pat and Paul, I think we're still awaiting the distribution of the full audit report. But other than that, it was a good meeting. And I'll entertain any questions.
Anyone have?
That concludes my report.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Okay, item number 6 would be the DMS facility services contract order change. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it over to Jim Hilliard to present this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. So I think as all organizations are doing, Valley Metro is looking for ways to ensure that when our staff need to return to their physical facilities, and many, as you know, have never left, that we're able to provide them with the highest level of protection from the spread of the coronavirus. One of the ways that we're doing that is by enhancing the cleaning of those facilities and of the non-revenue vehicles that many of them use for maintenance tasks. We've done that in 2 ways. The first is we've employed the same disinfectant fogging that is currently being used on light rail and bus vehicles. This fogging uses a catalyzed hydrogen peroxide solution that disinfects over large areas and in places that are not easy to reach through normal cleaning. It's then followed by a second application of a durable disinfecting film that continues to disinfect for several weeks after its initial application. And so the memo that you have before you amends our current contract through a change order to add that service to Valley Metro's administrative and operations and maintenance center facilities and 53 non-revenue vehicles. It provides that service once a month. It does so for the next 5 months because the contract for that cleaning service is currently in the process of being rebid, and we'll have a new award brought before you for approval going into the end of the calendar year. The second way that we're safeguarding our employees and work sites is by providing some additional daytime custodial services. So our building contracts provide sort of standard custodial services overnight, emptying trash cans, vacuuming. We have a daytime custodian that's coming in and just doing, through the course of the day, regular wipe downs of hard surfaces that aren't as amenable to the application of the persistent disinfectant through the fogging process. So I'm talking about things like door handles and conference room chair arms, etc. This custodian is working several hours a day at each of our facilities to make sure that those high-touch surfaces are as clean as possible, given that we continue to have a number of staff working in office on a day-to-day basis. So the total cost of these 2 change orders to the DMS contract will not exceed $203,827. And I'll also note that as CDC guidance on the types of cleaning change, we are free to modify the types of services we're purchasing. So this allows us to continue to purchase these services. Doesn't require us to. We could scale back if at some point CDC guidance recommends it be discontinued. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so we request a motion and a second to forward to the board of directors authorization for the CEO to execute a change order to the DMS facility services cleaning contract to add cleaning and disinfecting clogging of Valley Metro facilities to reduce the risk of COVID-19 through December 31st, 2020 at a cost not to exceed $203,827. Motion and a second.
So move, Kevin.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second, Gallego.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have all those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item number 7 is a request for an executive session. So I need a motion and a second to enter into an executive session. Reminding everybody that if we go into executive session, there is a email, Webex that information that was sent out prior to this meeting. So I have a motion and a second.
Motion, Kevin Hartke.
Thank you, sir.
Second, Suzanne Clapp.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so we will be adjourning this meeting and going into the WebEx meeting that was sent to you on an email. Pat is a couple minutes. Do we have most everybody back, Pat? Are we ready to start?
I believe so.
Is that a yes or no? We broke up.
Yes, I'm just verifying 1 quick second.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, we can begin, Chair.
Okay, so I'm going to start back up. So item number 9 is implementation of new customer service hours. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gee, a couple of years ago, I can't remember the exact timeline. We came and got approval of the presented to the boards and received approval to expand our customer service hours. This was in conjunction with the expansion of service, primarily in the city of Phoenix, and we matched it in some Valley Metro routes due to T2050 changes. We told the board at that time that we would come back to the board when we had a good feeling about service levels and the needs for staffing our center for that time, extended time. So I'd like to introduce Diana Quebecus. I hope she's on the call. Diana, you here?
Yes, I am.
I'll introduce Diana Quebecus, who's going to give you the report that we promised to give you as far as what we've done related to these service hours, especially in these times of COVID. So Diana, go for it.
Thank you, Scott, and Chair and board members. Just wanted to go through and kind of walk back, and like Scott said, in 2016, we changed those hours. You can see on the slide there, our hours were 6 to 8 and 7 to 7 on Saturday, 6 to 8 Monday through Friday. And then we expanded that to start at 5 a.m. and end at 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 6 to 8 on Saturday. So those were changed. And you can go to the next slide, Pat. And just a note that customers do have a few options, even when customer service is closed. So they have the option of doing trip planning functionality on the website, as well as Google.com Transit. And then we do have the next ride functionality in our automated system, as well as via texting. So they can text the stop ID and get the next 2 times that the bus would be there. So, and hopefully we'll soon have real-time bus location with bus time and Clever. So you can go to the next slide. Our call volumes in the early morning and late night did not materialize like we expected them to. Over 93% of our call volume is received during our old hours, and we had forecasted up to 14% increase in the calls during the expanded hours, and we really only had less than 7%. And then, obviously we were analyzing this well before COVID came. And so since 2016 and prior to COVID, we saw 18% decrease in total calls received, along with 28% decrease in transit calls and 44% increase in text messages. So we saw obviously a movement from calls into the text message options. And then this slide just shows you the interval hours and the average call volume during those interval hours. So you could kind of get a sense that 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. time frame was very quiet, as well as the 8 to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and early morning on Saturday and late on Saturday as well. So when we looked at that, we determined that it made more sense to go back to our previous hours. If you go to the next slide. And we did have peer group comparisons. So I'm a part of the National Transit Call Center peer group. And so I reached out to my peers to get an idea of what they were seeing or what their hours were. And so when we looked at that, and we had 20 that responded to me with their times, and less than 10% had operating hours after 7 p.m. during the week, and only 20% actually had weekend hours, with less than 5% being open on Sunday. So based on that, we took a look at, reducing our hours back to July. And you can see this saved 5 FTEs, which are reflected in our current budget, and gained some schedule efficiencies by not having our staff stretch so much. We could decrease the hold time for customers during peak afternoon hours because we'd have more people during that peak time, and instead of later at night when there was quiet volume. So we determined we'd implement this along with the service changes in October, and change the hours again back to the previous hours, back to July. So it'd be 6 a.m. start time to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Could you talk, that was an impressive growth in text messaging. Can you talk about how we, what we use to process text messaging requests, and just a little bit about what types of requests those are?
Sure. And typically, so customers have a stop ID for each of the bus stops, and all they have to do then is just text our short code in with that stop ID, and it'll show them the next 2 times. It'll come back, they'll get text to show the next 2 times of that the buses will arrive at that location. We've had that now for, I think it's well over 10 years. But we have seen a much more increase now. I think obviously marketing has shown that we're seeing a lot more people with smartphones and having the ability to do that, and text, unlimited text has also increased that as well.
So the only text communications that we're capable of doing is an automated text about bus arrivals?
Yes, although we just talked to our contractor, and we're looking at actually trying to push out on the text side some detour information. So we're kind of taking that and evaluating that at this time. But right now it's just going back and letting them know what the next arrival times are.
So the increase in text messaging then would not be related to COVID. It just would be.
No, I don't think it's related to COVID in the sense we saw the increase prior to COVID. So, and we're still seeing, we have a decrease in the number of texts along with the ridership and the call volume as the same. But prior to COVID, we had seen, the increases already.
Could you go back to the slide that I thought it said 44%? Well, I guess I have it in my notes.
Yeah, so 44% increase in the text messages.
Are we looking at additional capabilities and additional questions and communications beyond detours as a possibility?
Yeah, and I think we're pulling in communications to kind of look at to see if we can do some messaging in that regards outside of the detours, or messaging regarding COVID or anything like that. that is something we can do. That it looks like we have the functionality to do that we need to dig into.
So it's just
I think this board has been very excited about mobile phone payment and other moving towards advances and just more connectivity with phones. And I certainly would be supportive if our call center operations have multi-modes and consistent with our values as well. So thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you. So basically it's just push communication, right? You're just pushing down. You're not really taking anything back from riders. Is that correct?
No, but we do have the ability to analyze how many texts we get based on the stop IDs and information like that. That would help us do some analysis on that side. But you're right. It's basically just push down.
So and the pushing that the communication you're pushing down is based off of information we want to share with them. What if you got to Mayor Gallego's point? What happens if you had 3 or 4 or 20 residents saying, hey, this platform or this bus stop is having an issue this morning, and would you be able to gather all those communications, analyze it, and then be able to respond back to those concerns to say, hey, you know, we have your concern, here's what the problem is, and an estimated fix or not?
And ultimately down the road, I think that's possible. And again, with it, we just got an upgrade to the system, and so we're looking at all the changes. And you know, ideally, we'd like to go down that path. So.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, on the Rails side, we do have the capability with our Alert VM app. We have not expanded that to the bus side simply because the Alert VM is a real-time program, and it also involves security issues, which means we have to staff that virtually 24/7. But the capabilities you were talking about and the mayor was talking about as far as two-way communication, the ability to report incidents and report maintenance issues and things is we have that capability through Alert VM. We have been in discussions with City Phoenix Transit, and as of right now, we have decided jointly not to expand it, because if we expand it, we need to expand it to the entire bus system. It would entail a significant increase in our security personnel because the monitoring is quite labor intensive, even for rail. We have had some I would say spillage into bus. We do have people who ride both bus and rail who do use Alert VM, but we have not really pushed it. But it's something we could look toward long term, and we are looking toward to long term to enhance that ability to have two-way communication with riders and be able to handle all the things that you're talking about. Just as a side note, one thing we've seen in the 5 years I've been here is as we've done our rider surveys, the number and percentage of riders that we have, regardless of economic or income level, that have smartphones has increased rapidly. We surged past 80% of our riders that have smartphones. I think we're now pushing almost 90%. So the ability and the need to have smart ticketing and to be able to have two-way communications using smartphones is something which is becoming universal, and we will have that capability. We do have the capability technologically right now. It's just it's a big jump to go from rail-based Alert VM to entire system-based Alert VM.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
John, this is Bill Stipp.
Hey, Skip.
You know, I didn't get a sense from that conversation that the bus adding this feature to the bus system was going to be something we were going to be looking at in any short period of time. And perhaps we need to start thinking about that, or at least getting the board to the point of understanding that it's not an issue on the bus side. I was kind of holding my tongue earlier. The pretty chart with the colors and the bubbles and everything that we saw earlier, it's all about light rail, and Valley Metro is much more than light rail. And I think we need to start looking at this as an entire system that integrates bus and rail instead of two separate systems. While I realize we're legally two independent boards and two separate systems, we've got, I think we need to start looking at the bigger picture as a board. And I hope that we have an opportunity to at least start integrating, perhaps not the entire feature, but some of the features on the bus line. The buses go everywhere, and that's part of people's confidence in public transit as a whole. If they have bad bus experiences, I don't think they're going to try light rail, regardless of where it is. And if they have bad light rail experiences, they're probably not going to be willing to get on the bus. So if we can start looking at this as a whole system rather than focusing solely on the rail, I think Valley Metro as a whole is going to be much stronger going in to the rest of this decade, especially as we've got challenges coming up in the near term with funding, et cetera.
Thank you. So would you like to see some like a study session down the line, or?
No, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any need for anything, but I think we need the Valley Metro staff and everyone to start just thinking bigger picture. You know, when we start talking about what services do we offer, and we offer this for rail, we offer this for rail, we offer this for rail. We're forgetting this whole bus system, and the entire valley isn't set up for rail. So we are Valley Metro. We are not Goodyear's transit system or Peoria's transit system. We are Valley Metro. And I want us to start thinking bigger than our own communities and just as rail or just as bus, and start thinking about ourselves as an entire system. And then looking at what things can we integrate into bus. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way, or maybe this is the spark of a conversation that's going to pick up again 6 months from now. But I'm just want to emphasize to the rest of the board that we've got a huge system here that we need to be responsive to for everybody, both bus and rail. It's really a soapbox speech, and I appreciate the extra couple of minutes, but I think when we start talking about these technological advances, we have to start looking at ways to integrate it into the bus system. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, if I might, to follow up on Councilmember Stipp, we work closely with the City of Phoenix Transit, and one reason why you do see certain programs like Alert VM on the rail is because it's a much smaller universe. We have a 28-mile system, and even though we have about 15 million riders, that is dwarfed by the nearly 50 million riders on bus. The other thing is that we, as Valley Metro, run the operations on Valley Metro Rail, and for the bus, we operate under one brand. We operate a single customer service, but we work in concert with the City of Phoenix, who operates more buses and carries more passengers than we do. We want to make sure that the customer experience on bus is uniform across the system, which would mean we coordinate with City of Phoenix. There's many things we do in concert with them, such as the implementation of the Clever Device system that Diana touched on. And that's a system of communications, control, other things that we worked with the city to implement across all 900 buses between Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix fleets. And that goes into our increases the ability of our customer service. We could do, and we do those things, but whenever we do it system-wide, it is on buses, it is a much larger undertaking, simply because it's a bigger pie. And it involves coordination with the City of Phoenix and with us. And the other challenge we have is that on rail, we have one operator, one company that we contract with to operate. And on bus, I think between us and the City of Phoenix, we have 5 or 6 different contract providers. These aren't excuses. They're just one reason why you may see things come out earlier on rail. We use rail sort of as a laboratory. For example, the Alert VM has been incredibly successful on rail. it's a big undertaking. We would love to expand Alert VM across the board, but it is a big undertaking to do it across the whole system and across the whole valley, simply because the footprint is bigger, the buses are bigger, the providers are bigger, and it's just a much bigger thing. We'd love to have that conversation. It's something we'd need to do in conjunction with the City of Phoenix Transit, and would need the commitment of both the mayor and the city council and us, because there would be funding issues. Although we can make an argument that it certainly does increase a lot of things such as safety, public security, and operations. The question is whether it's something that both the city and the Valley Metro boards would be willing to invest in. We can implement and start those discussions and come back to you with City of Phoenix Transit as to what things could we do more system-wide. We can start those discussions and then come back and report to you. But just so you know, that's one reason, once again, why you see things on rail. It's just easier to implement. It's just easier to move into. Not that we're not willing to do it system-wide on the buses.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So, and I realize sometimes my my impassioned responses may come across as though I'm pointing a finger at our Valley Metro staff not doing enough, and that's not the case. But I'm really appealing to the entire board for us to start thinking about that. You know, I've got a big voice for a very tiny little sliver of this system. And I talked about that with in a little mini executive session the other day. But so I want to encourage the entire board to start thinking about it as a whole system. And it may be a place that we have to start making an investment in if this is something that everybody sees a benefit to. I can certainly understand the efficiency of doing it on a smaller system that we have complete control over. But we take this information in as board members and we go, well, okay, and then we move on. And I'm just calling out the fact that maybe it's not okay to move on, and just encouraging everybody. So I don't know that there's an answer to it. I don't know what the cost would be behind it. If it's a text messaging platform, if we're basing it solely on people's ability to have a smartphone in their pocket, then there's really not a lot of investment on our end other than on the receiving end and then the diagnosis and response of that text message. So to have that conversation and to find out what does that really look like, I think maybe valuable for a FY22 discussion and going into calendar year 23 as we start to look at it. COVID and the turn of the economy is going to force us to do a lot of things differently. And I think I just want to start that conversation. And I am absolutely done now. I won't speak again. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or concerns? Because Scott, I kind of agree with Councilman Skip. I think that this is becoming prevalent, and sooner than later, we need to start addressing this. And how we do that, I have no idea. But I think we do need to start looking at this with the rule.
Chair,
this is
Councilman. Oh, sorry. I had my hand up, but I don't know. Hey, just really quick, I appreciate Vice Mayor Stipp's comments, and I understand. I look at this, COVID, the financial struggles is not only challenging times, but opportunistic times too. And I think that if we can create a better system regionally, then we should always be looking at trying to do that. So I certainly support giving it a look. I don't think there's anything that gets hurt by doing that. The one thing I do worry a little bit about is we have smart technology so much that sometimes not everybody that may have a cell phone has data. And I think we have to be careful about that a little bit too. Mm-hmm. So make sure that they do have access. Wi-Fi is available. I know in some of our school districts, and being a former school board member, that is one of the things that's always been an issue. Everybody may have a smartphone and they may have some of that technology, but if they don't have access to Wi-Fi, it really doesn't do them any good. So I just want to make sure that we keep that on the forefront, and then we continue to look at ways that we can be consistent throughout the system and create a really good experience for everybody, not only just light riders, but, bus riders too. So I certainly support, giving it a better look.
Thank you.
One final comment from me, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I also think that Vice Mayor Stipp's proposal makes sense. We don't know what the financial future is for our systems, and but it does sound like this board cares a lot about call center operations and how we communicate with our passengers. I think we want to understand what our peer agencies are doing in terms of call center operations and use of texting. So if we can just stay on top of best practices, there may be ways to use technology that actually help us save money and improve customer service. Different types of riders are used to communicating in different ways. And so for some people, it's that phone call is always going to be what matters. But for others, they may be able to get a faster and more satisfactory outcome with a simple text, and we may actually be able to save money. So it just sounds like there is enthusiasm on the board for continuing this conversation. The expanded hours made sense to me when we passed Prop 400 or when we passed our 104 in Phoenix, and appreciate Valley Metro working with us on consistency. But given current budget realities and the hours of use, I will be supporting this motion moving forward. And actually don't remember if we do have a motion on the table. Do we, or do we need one?
No, this is just an informational.
Oh, it's not, okay. All right, well, it sounds like it was useful conversation
Yes.
to have, and if but we should continue this conversation, and particularly if technology can make it easier to communicate with our passengers and maybe take some calls that are not super complex off the table for our call center, that also seems valuable. Sometimes you call and you just want one simple piece of information.
Right.
Great,
Scott,
thank you.
You had a comment? Scott?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I will, we'll start working. We'll work with our partners at City of Phoenix, and we'll come back with some more system-wide things, especially that relate to bus. Some things that go into the communication that we've talked about. Also, this is a good time to do that because with our new ticketing system, it involves enhanced communication capabilities too. So we'll work on it and come back to the board in a couple, 3 months with just some ideas as to what the future will look like. Because we are seeing it, we just have not formulated some of those proposals or ideas for the board yet, but we'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is just an item for information only. No action is needed. So moving on, item number 10 is the quarterly report. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, both item 10 and 10 and 11 are both for information. There's no presentation. If there are any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, it's Bill again.
Yes, sir.
The only, and I know we've talked about this before, is the ability to track on-time performance when we talk about bus. And I noticed in the operations report, both East Valley and West Valley buses, we don't have on-time performance, and our performance metrics are slipping in both sides on bus performance. I really want to just call attention to that. And I know we're waiting for, this new system to take over, but we have got to find a way to determine whether these buses are running on time or not. I think that's one of the things that the bus riders are really counting on is some consistency in their service, and not for us not being able to tell whether they're running on time or how that looks, feels from an administrative perspective or a oversight perspective, which the board provides, feels a little, feels like we're not doing what we should be doing. So I really want to encourage us to find a way to get answers to both the on-time performance, and then start looking at those metrics and coming up, not just a report that, hey, we haven't met 4 of the 5 metrics, but what's going on. I'd like to get more detail on that. And maybe that's a discussion for another time as well.
Yeah, and Councilmember Stipp, thank you very much. On the on-time performance, that is strictly a technological issue with the transition over to the Clever Devices system that we've referred to. There have been glitches that have taken longer to implement. The City of Phoenix is leading that effort as far as implementation. So it's both us and the city that have the same issue. I am hoping that by the next time we give you a quarterly report, we will have that data available because we'll have fixed the technological glitches. Because we're as frustrated as you are as not being able to track exactly where the things are. Just to give you a quick deal, what the Clever Devices does that we have not been able to do is it really tracks bus operations on a real-time basis and does it much more down to literally the foot than others do, and it coordinates and puts into analytical and data programs based on GPS-driven communication, real-time communications, which we didn't have before Clever Devices. There've been a few glitches in getting that to work and having the coordination within the program. So I'm hoping by next quarterly report, we'll have that information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Item number 11 is the travel and expenditures and solicitations. Mr. Smith.
Hey, I'm sorry, Chair. I'm a little late. Sorry. Everything's a little slow here at my house. We have way too many
and I can't scroll fast, enough to see everybody.
No, that's okay. Hey, I just wanted to piggyback on what Bill said, not necessarily in regard to on-time performance, but I really think we want to just try to get a hold of our bus complaints, and really would like to see a way that we could maybe see if there's some trends, if there's been some new type of complaints because of COVID, if that may be the reason for the increase. I think Mayor Gallego mentioned it a little bit too earlier, but if there is a way that we could really track those trends moving forward, I think it'd be really behoove us to have that information so we could implement some changes. Like I said, I think now's the opportunity to be able to address some of the things, challenges that we've had. So why not really look at where we are with complaints and try to get those down to a standard that we're comfortable with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm scrolling.
Noted.
I'm scrolling across my screen. Just make sure nobody else has their hand up. I apologize. Okay, Scott, I'm sorry. Back to item 11, travel expenditures and solicitations.
Once again, if there are any questions, there's no presentation related to this. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Item number 12 would be the future agenda items and report from current events. Are there any members that have an item that they'd like to place on a future agenda, or have anything that they'd like to share with the committee? Okay. Item number 13 would be our next meeting. Our next meeting for the board is scheduled on Thursday, September 17th at 11:15 in the morning. And with that, we're adjourned for this meeting, the joint meeting. And I will call the meeting of RPTA Board of Directors for August to order. Item number one is public comment. For today's meeting, public comments are being taken in a written format and are being entered into the official minutes of the meeting. Item number 2 is the minutes. The minutes for the June 18th, 2020 board meeting are presented for approval. I need a motion and a second. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 18th, 2020?
So moved, Kevin.
Thank you.
Second, Lauren.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is bus inspection service contract. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, if we can give a presentation on this, I can have Ray Abraham give a short presentation. Ray?
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I don't have a presentation planned. I could explain to you what this authorization is for. It is company that provides our bus inspections on site here in Tempe and Mesa. They do random audits of our contractors' performance. They also provide us support at the bus factories for our bus build. They have been the incumbent for the last several years, and our present contract expires October 30th of this year. So we are asking your authorization for our CEO to engage in another 5-year contract with the same company for the amount listed here, not to exceed, I believe it's there's a total.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the committee that has any questions or comments?
I'm having trouble hearing folks, but
I'm looking, I don't see anybody waving, so
there are no questions.
I don't believe so. Pat, do you see any questions?
No, we're ready for a motion and a second, Chair.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to execute a 5-year contract with 2-year option for vehicle maintenance consultants to provide bus inspection services in the amount not to exceed $2,314,300 for the period of November 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2027.
So moved, Mayor Pereira Wickenburg.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Lauren.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, recommendation October 2020 as transit service changes. Mr. Smith.
And Mr. Chair, we do not have a presentation on this unless someone would like, a member of the board would like to have questions answered. The changes are somewhat minimal other than the downtown changes that you were briefed on during the study session. So we can move it right in with the motion unless someone has a question. We presented these changes several months ago, or a couple 3 months ago in a previous meeting, and there have been no significant changes to the plan since that time.
Okay. Anybody? No comment? Any comments, concerns? If not, I need a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to amend member agency FY21 IGAS as necessary and to execute change orders to the First Transit and Total Transit fixed route contract and Transdev paratransit contract to accommodate the recommended October 2020 service changes. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. You need a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Who provided the second?
That would be me. Pat, Councilmember Arenado Savage.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I believe it passed. I didn't hear any opposition. The motion carried. Okay, item number 5 is the bus operator protective barriers for fixed route bus fleet contract award. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Scott Wisner, I'm hoping you're on the Webex.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, I think we've mentioned this before, and I think Jim Hilliard alluded to one of the major items that we're doing as part of the COVID response is to protect our operators. And so Scott will give a presentation on a major contract that relates to some modifications we are proposing to make to our buses. Scott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and members of the board. As you know, the recent pandemic has created lots of challenges, most notably our passenger boarding and fare collections. We went to rear door boarding and alighting. We've gone to passenger limits. We've required face coverings now. And in reaction to all of those things, we started to install barriers behind the operator, 6 feet or more behind the operator, a plastic barrier to help protect them from airborne particulates floating up into the cabin area. And then most recently, we've installed plastic curtains around the cockpit area to try to protect them even further. Next slide, please. Despite that, we've still had a host of challenges. Obviously, on the fare collection side, we can't collect cash fares and we cannot scan the electronic fare media. The curtains themselves don't really protect the operator from any type of physical assault or unwanted intrusion into the cockpit area. And there have been an increase in incidents over the last 6 to 8 months of this year. And so in response to that, we really believe we needed to look further into ways to protect our frontline staff. This is just a photo of the most recent steps we've taken by putting this plastic curtain up in the front area. You can see you can retract it backwards and then close it. We haven't had to use this yet because we're not at the stage of going to front door boardings yet, but we did that in anticipation of eventually going back to front door boardings whenever it is safe to do so. So I just wanted to show you the steps we've taken there. So in conjunction with the city of Phoenix, we've been doing a lot of research and looking into best practices, looking at other properties across the country and transit systems, and the vast majority of them are exploring a little greater effective barrier types. So we did some research and did some specifications and developed a joint RFP with the city of Phoenix. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is awarding a firm fixed contract to the protective company. This is a simulation of the barrier that we've chosen. You can see it's a rugged door. It's an actual door, like a car door. It has two pieces of glass. One of them slides up and down so that the operator can actually open the window if they wanted to interface once COVID is done. But this type of barrier protects them from airborne, viruses, as well as from the intrusion into the cockpit area. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the inside of the door. It's a very rugged door. It's got a handle, just like a door handle. It's got an up and down switch. Also got 2 ventilation fans, which was a very important feature we looked at, because obviously in the cockpit area, it can get very stuffy in there. So this allows us to ventilate that area so that the operator can maintain proper temperature inside that area. It's very easy to retrofit our fleet with this. It's just a couple brackets that they have to install in the floor and in the roof. And then this also allows us to detach the door whenever we have to do any service area in that particular part of the bus. This is a photo of an actual barrier that's in place right now. This is the barrier we'd be purchasing. The picture on the left is the barrier closed. So you can see it's not any very intrusive at all to the public. The public can still see the driver just fine. It provides a visual for the driver so they can see out the front windshield. They can see the right side of the mirror. They can see out to the doorways. So, and then the other picture on the right is the way the driver would access the driving portion of the bus. Project timeline is expected to take about 60 to 75 days to start seeing these installations take place. We've already got a jump on that with the contractor. So once we get approval, then we'll be able to sign a contract and get moving on the installation of that, on the production of those doors. They can do about 36 doors per week. And they'll do it at nighttime so it doesn't interfere with our operation. And we think it'll take about 6 to 8 months to do our fleet and the city of Phoenix's fleet as well. The slide gives a summary of the costs associated with this project. We did build in some contingency just in case we had any unforeseen problems. Lastly, this is our staff recommendation to award a contract to Complete Coachworks in the amount to not exceed $1,977,439. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
I have a real quick question. What happens in the case of a medical emergency with the driver? How can members of the public, if they have to assist him, can they get in there?
There is an emergency release on that door. It's a button that you'd have to reach around to get to. So there is an emergency release button on that door.
Okay.
And if the driver doesn't lock the door, then that's another way somebody could get in.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? No. Okay, so we need a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Complete Coach Works for the amount not to exceed $1,977,439 for the purchase and installation of protective barrier for the fixed route bus fleet. I have a motion and a second.
So move, Kevin Hartke.
Thank you, sir. We have a
Second, Suzanne Clapp.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Item number 6 is future agenda items and request report of current status. Are there any members that want to add an item to a future agenda or have anything they'd like to share to the board? Nothing? Okay. Item number 7 will be our next meeting. It will be scheduled for Thursday, September 17th, 2020 at 11:15 in the morning. And that concludes our meeting today. Thank you very much.
Thanks to everybody. If the Valley Metro Rail board members could stay on, we'll just continue on.
Chair Heredia, whenever you're ready.
Okay. We'll wait maybe a minute.
If you could, I think everyone's still getting their parking validated.
I think, do we have everybody?
I'm checking very quickly. I think we do.
Yep.
Okay, we are ready to go.
All righty. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Convening the meeting and welcome members to this August meeting. Item number 1, public comment. For today's meeting, public comment is being taken in written format and will be entered into the official minutes of the meeting. Item 2 of the agenda, minutes. The minutes from the June 18, 2024 meeting are presented for approval. Request a motion and a second to approve board meeting minutes from June 18, 2020.
So move, Kevin Hartke.
Second, Gallego.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Perfect. I think we got everybody, so motion passes. Number 3, item number 3, consent agenda. Items are listed on the consent agenda for approval. Ask the committee if they would like any items removed from the consent agenda. Hearing none. Want to request a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, Gallego.
Second, Hartke.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item number 4, South Central Extension, Downtown Hub Design Amended Funding Agreement. So I'll pass it over to Scott to talk a little bit on this.
Yeah, I was thinking, Mr. Chair, we might skip over this because I don't think Mayor Gallego is interested in building the South Central project. So as long as she's okay with that, we'll know. I'm going to turn over to Wolf Road who can explain briefly what this item is. Wolf?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the board, This item is to amend an existing funding agreement with the City of Phoenix for the South Central Downtown Hub project. And the reason for this amendment is to add $350 million of Phoenix funds to the existing agreement for the project. Most of these funds are to cover costs that we will incur prior to receiving federal funds. And it sometimes, often takes 1 to 3 years to see the federal money after we actually make expenditure. So essentially what we're looking for here are bridge funds, I'll say, that allow us to keep our cash flow going. And then at the end of this, Phoenix will be reimbursed for these funds. And that amount is approximately $330 million. A small portion of the request here is about $20 million, and it's just for adjustments in costs between Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix. In our case, Valley Metro will pay a little bit more, Phoenix will pay a little bit less, so we need to move some of those funds over to our side of the ledger just based on further work that we've done with the city. Bottom line is the overall amount of funds that City of Phoenix commits to this project are still the same. It's the $427 million that we have always been talking about in recent times with the City of Phoenix. So the request here is for the CEO to receive authorization to amend the existing funding agreement with the City of Phoenix for the South Central Downtown Hub to provide an additional $350 million to Valley Metro. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Wolf. Anyone have any questions?
Move approval.
Perfect. I think request a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to amend the existing funding agreement with the City of Phoenix for the South Central Extension Downtown Hub project for Phoenix to provide an additional $350 million to Valley Metro. So I think Mayor Gallego makes a motion.
Second, move, whatever works for you, ladies.
Councilwoman Arredondo second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Nope. Motion passes. And this action is pending City of Phoenix Council action, right, Scott?
That's correct.
Okay. Perfect. Item number 5, Siemens Mobility Light Rail Vehicle Contract Amendment. So, Scott.
And we're going to turn it back over to Wolf Reroute to talk about an exciting contract with Siemens for some new light rail vehicles. So, Wolf, once again.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's me again. This item is to amend an existing contract that we have with Siemens Mobility for procurement of additional light rail vehicles, specifically for the South Central Downtown Hub project. We have an existing contract with Siemens. They are currently providing Valley Metro with 11 light rail vehicles that are 3 of which are here now, another 8 that will be arriving during the course of this year. So we'll have those vehicles available for our existing projects. But we also now need to exercise one of the options in this contract. There are actually two options that this contract has during its term for additional vehicles. And what we are proposing today is to exercise the first option. That would be to acquire 14 additional vehicles for the South Central Downtown Hub project. All of those costs that we're going to be incurring for these vehicles are included within the project cost for South Central Downtown Hub. Just a little bit more background for you. Today we have 50 light rail vehicles. When we receive the vehicles this year, we'll have 11 more plus the 14. We'll have a total fleet in 2024. We'll have a total fleet of 75 light rail vehicles to operate our system. And what we anticipate in 2024 is that we will no longer have a single line. Once South Central is done, we will now have two lines. We'll have an east-west line that goes from Gilbert Road in Mesa to the downtown area in Phoenix, and then we'll have a north-south line that goes from Baseline Road along South Central all the way up to the Metro Center area. And this fleet that we're buying will provide the fleet for that operation. And that includes not only our needs for peak fleet, but also our needs for spares that we need to have, as well as any special events, as well as what we call gap trains. And these are trains that are out of the system for emergency purposes. So the authorization that we're seeking here today is for $78.5 million approximately, and includes 14 light rail vehicles, includes spare parts that we need for those vehicles, training, and also a 5% contingency for things that may happen as we manufacture these vehicles. So with that, our recommendation is to, for the board to authorize our CEO to execute a contract with, a contract amendment with Siemens Mobility to purchase 14 light rail vehicles to expand our fleet for the South Central downtown project, an amount not to exceed $78.5 million and some change. And that's, again, I'm ready to answer questions if you have any.
Hey, Wolf, I have a question. Are most of the vehicles or all the vehicles made by Siemens?
Mr. Chairman, the vehicles that we have currently, the 50 vehicles that we have now, are manufactured by a company named Kinkashario. And when we went back out to bid for our fleet, which we're required to do, Siemens was the successful bidder at that time. So the expansion fleet that we're doing now and these others that we're asking for today are all Siemens. So we'll have 50 Kinkashario vehicles, and we'll have 25 Siemens vehicles.
Wow.
In addition to that, we'll also have 6 streetcar vehicles that are being manufactured by Brookville.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, request a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to execute a contract amendment with Siemens Mobility Incorporated to purchase 14 LRVs to expand the LRV fleet in conjunction with the SCEDH project for an amount not to exceed $78,509,000 with I think 911. So sorry, a lot of acronyms there. A motion.
So moved.
So moved
Second.
by Mayor Gallego, second by Mayor Harkey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Item number 6 on the agenda. Thank you, Wolf. Item number 6 on the agenda, future agenda items, requests, and report on current events. Any of the members have any agenda items for future meetings, or if they want anything that the board should fill us in? Staff fill us in?
Mr. Chairman, just a thank you to everyone. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the passage of Prop 105. And if Valley Metro wasn't doing a good job with the light rail system, our voters in all 8 council districts wouldn't have been so enthusiastic. And it was fun to have these big items move forward on today's anniversary.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego.
And thanks to Mayor for your leadership. I don't think you were on when we first celebrated this, but thank you for your leadership and all in the city of Phoenix. As I mentioned before, I think you got on. This is also the 5th year, close to the 5th year anniversary of T2050 and Prop 104, which you were instrumental in, and the 5th year anniversary of the opening of the Central Mesa Extension. So a lot of good history related to light rail in this particular week. With the most current, of course, being, like you said, the Prop 105, which not only went down, but we have to mention that to go down 65-35 and to get that kind of affirmation or reaffirmation from the voters when they had actually a pretty good alternative. They could have easily chosen the alternative, but they chose to support the system, and that doesn't happen. We appreciate your compliments, but it also doesn't happen without strong political leadership. So congratulations and thank you for that.
Perfect. Yeah. Let's progress in public transportation for our residents, right? So thank you, Phoenix, for taking the lead, and the rest of the cities, everybody here at Valley Metro. So thank you, staff. So next meeting is Thursday, September 17, 2020 at 11:15 a.m. So thank you, everybody. You have a good rest of the week and weekend. So.
Thank you.